பாலஸ்தீன முன்னாள் கல்வி உயர்கல்வி அமைச்சரும் பாலஸ்தீன நிர்வாகத்தின் துணை செயலாளருமான டாக்டர் சப்ரி சைதமிடம் சிறப்பு செய்தியாளர் ஹரிஹரன் நடத்தும் சிறப்பு நேர்காணலை தற்போது பார்க்கலாம்.
நேர்களே, அன்பு வணக்கம். பாலஸ்தீனிய தலைநகரம் ராமல்லாவில் இருந்து இணைந்திருக்கின்றோம். நம்மிடையே பாலஸ்தீனிய அத்தாரிட்டி ராமல்லாவை மேற்கு கரையை ஆளக்கூடிய பாலஸ்தீனிய அத்தாரிட்டியுடைய முக்கிய நிர்வாகி, அதனது துணை பொதுச் செயலாளர், கல்வி, உயர்கல்வி உள்ளிட்ட இலாக்காக்களுக்கு அமைச்சராக இருந்து இந்த அரசை நடத்தக்கூடிய அபு மாசனுக்கு ஆலோசகராகவும் இருக்கக்கூடிய டாக்டர் சப்ரி சைதம் நம்மோடு இருக்கிறார். Thank you very much, sir. Before we talk about the conflict and the ongoing war, Palestine and India have shared historic relations, very strong bonds. What is your assessment of the Indian position taken in this current round of conflict?
I would say welcome to Ramallah. Good to see you. I had hoped to be receiving you in different circumstances, but now that the war is prevailing, we have to talk about the misery and anguish of the conflict. It's always been a great honor to be working with our Indian friends. We have shared history, we have shared solidarity, and we have shared common positions in international arenas and local circles in which India has been a formidable supporter of Palestine and a carrier of the hope, of the message of hope for Palestinians, for the realization of a Palestinian state and the adoption of a different future, a future of hope, prosperity, coexistence. But quite recently, India has been needing a lot of encouragement from our side to repeat history in terms of support. We appreciate what you are doing, but we expect more to see from the Indian people and the Indian government at large of support that's needed for Palestinians.
Is it correct to say you're slightly disappointed about the position the Prime Minister Narendra Modi-led regime has taken on this current conflict?
I would say, you have to be fair in your reporting. You have to be fair in commenting on the situation as is, and you have to be fair in transmitting the message that's coming out of Gaza. I have lost 44 members of my own family, from my immediate family.
In Gaza?
In Gaza, one of whom is a fine 18-year-old girl who earned her highest score in high school in Palestine for 2023, so just started college, and another doctor surgeon at the Shifa hospital who was killed after 7 days of work formidably and furiously at the hospital to save a lot of lives. Why kill them? Why kill 2 million people for the sake of chasing a specific party in Palestine or expressing your own anger? That's not the way forward. If you don't uphold humanity, history will not be having any mercy on you. And I would say, we collectively as Palestinians deserve to live, and Israel has to accept the policy of live and let live. You cannot have the cake and eat it all.
But Israel says its response to an unprovoked attack by Hamas, what happened on the October 7th this month, was tragic, horrific to say the least. So do you condemn that horrific acts by Hamas?
I would say, would Israel condemn now the killing of almost 6,000 Palestinians, the majority of whom are women and children, as a representative of the Palestinian Authority, as a member of the Central Committee of Fatah, which is chaired by Chairman Abbas and previously by Chairman Arafat? I would say, we have stood for peace, we have advocated peace, we have worked tirelessly to push the international community to recognize the very resolution it had passed, the resolutions for the recognition of self-determination for Palestinians. Why are we here today? It's because this conflict was never resolved. And here comes the responsibility of the international community, and here comes the need to seize the moment. Although it is gloom and gloom, although it is a massacre, what's happening to our people, I would say it is also an opportunity for the people around the world to recognize that there is a job that was unfinished, that has led us to places, and one of the
வந்திருக்கிறோம் என்றால் உலகத்தில் உள்ள மக்களுக்கு எங்களுக்கு என்ன நடந்தது, எங்களை சுற்றி என்ன நடக்கிறது என்ற உண்மை தாவை சொல்ல வேண்டும் என்பதற்காகத்தான் வந்திருக்கிறோம்.
Of Israeli bombardment, it is genocide. What is happening, the immediate killing of Palestinians, is genocide. 6,000 people. What would a baby do to Israel? How would this, the murder of babies would ever bring peace to Israel? There's no electricity, there's no water, there's no telecom, and there's no
ஒரு
lifeline for the
மாபெரும்
Palestinians there.
மக்கள் அழிவு
Israeli
நடவடிக்கையாகும்.
politicians say that we have to kill Palestinians because they voted Hamas.
ஒரு
You're telling me
நாளைக்கு
that a little
6000
baby
பேர்
has
என்ற
voted Hamas?
விதத்திலே
Come on. Where is
மக்கள்
humanity?
இறந்து
What happened?
கொண்டிருக்கின்றார்கள். பாலஸ்தீனியர்கள் எங்கு செல்வார்கள்?
And I think this is the
You're
opportunity.
absolutely justified in your anger, but Israeli children, Israeli elderly women who are 95, 100, they were killed, massacred.
I belong
on
to the
October
PLO.
7th.
I belong to the PLO. The PLO always advocated the message of peace, at least in the coming 2 decades, 3 decades. It has signed the Oslo Agreement. It was hopeful that out of the peace process we will get peace. But instead, out of the peace process, Israel wanted the process. It has expanded settlements. It has annexed more land. It has injected more and more settlers on Palestinian territory that was categorized by India and the international community as occupied territory. Israel was serving its
பாலஸ்தீனிய மக்கள் பல பெரும் எண்ணிக்கையில் கொண்டு குவிக்கப்படுகிறார்கள். உலகம் இதனை நன்கு அறிந்திருக்கிறது, இந்தியாவும் இதனை நன்கு அறிந்திருக்கிறது.
I would say, the international community at large knows officially who represents the Palestinian people and where. And I would say, you can still seize the moment, talk to the PLO, talk to the Palestinian people about resolving the conflict.
So you're still being ambiguous. Hamas does not represent the Palestinian
bombardment of Palestinians is not going to represent any hope for the future. I would say, despite the fact you are trying to get the answer regarding Hamas, I would tell you what we see in Gaza is not targeting Hamas only. It is targeting civilians. Out of the 6,000 people that have been killed, there is more than 2,000 children. There is about 1,000 and more women. Why kill them? What would that mean? If anything, it will entrench both sides. It will deepen hatred. It will encourage incitement, and it will make the formula of coexistence null and void, sadly.
I spoke to an Israeli former Prime Minister, Mr. Ehud Olmert. He feels it was Benjamin Netanyahu's one-state policy and his certain concepts that encouraged Hamas's activity and weakened the Palestinian Authority. Do you think this is the root cause of what we are facing, what we are in midst of right now?
I mean, don't look at the situation focusing on the developments that have taken shape over the last 2 weeks. You have to look at the history of conflict. 75 years where India, on many occasions,
இங்கு நடப்பது அனைத்தையும் கடந்த 2 வாரங்களில் நடந்த விஷயங்களின் அடிப்படையில் எப்போது பார்க்க கூடாது. வரலாற்றை நாம் ஆழ்ந்து நோக்க வேண்டும்.
UN resolutions implemented in specific parts of the world while the Palestinians have been deprived. And Abu Mazen, our president, has said it many times. There's over 1,000 decisions that were passed by the UN, whether at the General Assembly or at the Security Council. Why don't you implement even one, just one of them?
கடந்த ஆண்டுகளில் ஐக்கிய நாடுகள் சபை பல்வேறு தீர்மானங்களை நிறைவேற்றி இருக்கிறது. அந்த தீர்மானங்களை எல்லாம் இஸ்ரேல் நிறைவேற்றி இருக்கிறதா?
That have led us to today. I think again it is an opportunity and one should seize the moment to change the reality on the ground.
You spoke about Indian position in the past. Do you believe in a way that the Indian support for the Palestinian cause has weakened or diluted with its close friendship with Israel getting deeper?
I wouldn't say that it's been diluted in the hearts and minds maybe of the older generation of Indians. They know the connection between Palestine and India. But I think there is a responsibility on your back and the back of media platforms to report fairly from Palestine, to say who occupied who.
பாலஸ்தீனத்தின் மீது காண்பிக்கின்ற அந்த அன்பில் ஏதேனும் குறைவு ஏற்பட்டிருக்கிறது என்று நான் நினைக்கிறேன். ஏனென்றால் எங்களுடைய உறவு நீண்ட காலத்து உறவு. உங்களை போன்ற ஊடகங்கள் தான் இங்கே உள்ள உண்மையான நிலைமை என்ன என்பதை இந்தியாவுக்கும் இந்தியர்களுக்கும் எடுத்து சொல்ல வேண்டும். அவ்வாறு சொல்லும்போது நிலைமை மாறும், பழைய நிலைமை திரும்பும் என நான் கருதுகிறேன்.
To fight for their own independence. I think it is the responsibility of all those who have amassed weapons now. Instead of amassing your weapons, why don't you put your political zeal into this and finish the Arab-Israeli conflict in a way that is acceptable, that promotes peace, that allows coexistence? And I would tell you with honesty, as a
உலக
human
நாடுகள்
being, I
அனைத்தும்
don't like to see
இந்த பாலஸ்தீனிய பிரச்சனையை ஆயுதத்தால் தீர்க்காமல் அமைதி பேச்சுவார்த்தை மூலம் தீர்ப்பதற்கு முயற்சி செய்ய வேண்டும்.
You think this crisis has in a way presented an opportunity to work towards that? There are certain hopes in some sections of Israeli political spectrum.
If you look at the picture, you see pessimism everywhere. I like to be optimistic. I like to build on
இந்த பிரச்சனை
this to say,
தீருமா தீராதா
time has
என்பது
come
பற்றிய
for us
அவநம்பிக்கைகள் தான்
collectively to
எல்லா
come to
இடத்திலும்
sense,
நிரம்பி இருக்கிறது.
and the sense is basically aligned with the need to establish an independent Palestinian state. And here comes the most
Alongside
important,
Israel?
I would say alongside Israel, yes, in accordance to international law and UN resolutions and the wish and will of all partners around the world. But I
இந்த
would say
பிரச்சனை
with
உலக
activities
நாடுகளின்
taking place, with hostilities, with
பார்வைப்படியும்
genocide, with killing
ஐக்கிய நாடுகள்
of
சபை
innocent
நிறைவேற்றி
women and
இருக்க
children, this
தீர்மானங்கள் படியும்
creates
தீர்க்கப்பட
the
வேண்டும்.
hard feelings which it becomes difficult for Palestinians to entertain the thought of any coexistence whatsoever, and same applies to Israelis. That's why I say seeding in hatred will not help you. And here we count on our Indian friends. Don't take sides. I don't want you to be biased.
இந்த
Be
இடத்தில்
fair
தான் நான்
to your
நம்ம
friends, to
எங்களுடைய
your old
இந்திய
comrades of
நண்பர்களுக்கு
yours, to your
ஒரு
brothers,
வேண்டுகோள் விடுக்க
the Palestinian people
நினைக்கிறோம்.
whom you have long
நீங்கள்
supported,
யாருடைய
long endorsed the
பக்கமாகவும்
struggle for
செயல்படாதீர்கள்.
Do you think there is a new bias in the Indian side?
I would say, I had hoped to see more from India. I had hoped to see more activity, more engagement. And
நீங்கள்
India
வரலாற்றின்படி
is an
உண்மையின்படி
extremely big country,
உங்களுடைய
bigger than
நிலைப்பாட்டை
what you
எடுங்கள்.
imagined.
Do you see a pro-Israel
Palestinian
slant
people
in the
have a lot
current
of
Indian
respect.
government's policy
I think there is a lot of commercial activity that's influencing political decisions.
between Israel and India?
I would say indeed we need to see more and more engagement from the Indian government with the Israeli government. I would like to see India use its connections.
இஸ்ரேலுக்கும் இந்தியாவுக்கும் இடையே வணிக ரீதியிலான தொடர்புகள் ஏராளமாக இருக்கின்றன.
What role do you
அதையும் நாம்
expect
பார்க்க
India to play?
வேண்டியிருக்கிறது.
I would say India has a major role to play at the UN by advocating a ceasefire. India has responsibilities in
இந்தியா
different platforms.
இந்த பிரச்சனையில் ஒரு மிகப்பெரிய பங்காற்றக்கூடிய நிலையிலே இருக்கிறது. அமைதியை ஏற்படுவதற்கு ஆதரவாக அவர்கள் பேச வேண்டும். சண்டையை நிறுத்துவதற்கு ஆதரவாக அவர்கள் பேச வேண்டும்.
Importance of world dialogue to end the Arab-Israeli conflict and promote the message of peace. And also India can support the Palestinians in rebuilding what has been demolished in Gaza. It has done and played a major role in
இந்தியா
supporting
பாலஸ்தீனத்திற்கு ஆதரவளிக்கும் வகையில் செயல்பட வேண்டும். இங்கே பெரிய அழிவு ஏற்பட்டிருக்கிறது. அந்த அழிவிலிருந்து மீண்டு வருவதற்கு பாலஸ்தீனத்திற்கு இந்தியா உதவி செய்ய வேண்டும்.
Support institution building in Palestine and come to being the realization of a Palestinian state.
So, do you believe India is the right candidate to do all this?
India has always been close to heart, no matter what happens. And I think the Palestinian people at large
India
will never forget the
மனதளவிலே மிகவும்
successes.
நல்ல நாடு.
Yasser Arafat called Indira Gandhi his own sister.
Well, I've had the
You've
pleasure
been to India,
of.
right?
I've never been to India, sadly, but I would like to go. I know how Palestinians
நான்
perceive
இந்தியாவிற்கு
India
இதுவரை
and
சென்றதில்லை,
how respect
ஆனால்
they have,
போக
how much respect
விரும்புகிறேன்.
they have for India. So if India plays a major role as an interlocutor, it means a lot to Palestinians. So let this be a message of encouragement.
Can you recollect what Yasser Arafat used to say about India, Mrs. Gandhi and so on?
I have had a lot of encounters with Chairman Arafat in which he looked at India as a sister country, as a even representative of the aspirations of the
பாலஸ்தீனத்தின் முன்னாள்
Palestinian
தலைவர் யாசர்
people. Also, the
அரபாத்
struggle of
இந்தியாவை
Indians in the
எப்போதும்
statehood,
தன்னுடைய சகோதர நாடாகவே
fighting
பார்த்தார்.
against colonization and their independence was a message of hope which Arafat kept on praising. And we
காலனி
continue to
ஆதிக்கத்தை
praise and
எதிர்த்து
celebrate
அவர்கள்
and we count
போராடி
on you
சுதந்திரத்தை
and your good
பெற்றதை
people
அவர்கள்
and the
பெருமையாக
government of
சொல்வார்.
India to bring about a different reality.
What is your message to Prime Minister Narendra Modi?
I would say, you have played a major role in advocating a connection with Israel. You have deepened the relationship between India and Israel. I would like to tell you that peace for Israel means peace for the Palestinians.
இஸ்ரேலுக்கும்
advocate justice to be
இந்தியாவிற்கும் இடையிலே ஒரு
prevailed
நல்ல
and
உறவை
will work for
ஏற்படுத்துவதற்கு
the collective
பணிபுரிந்திருக்கிறீர்கள்
coexistence
என்று
of Palestinians and
நரேந்திர
Israel.
மோடி அவர்களுக்கு நான் சொல்ல விரும்புகிறேன். அதே போல பாலஸ்தீனத்திற்கு இடையிலேயும் நல்ல உறவை ஏற்படுத்த முனைய வேண்டும் என்று கேட்டுக்கொள்வேன்.
Life changed in the West Bank too after the October 7th and the war that subsequently began.
Remember, it has not been a while since Netanyahu stood before the world with the map showing, the future of the Middle East. In the map, there was no Gaza and there was no West Bank. So people who are watching the developments on the ground recognize the fact that Netanyahu is going to finish Gaza by pushing Palestinians, hopefully, or at least he's hopeful rather, to get Palestinians out. But hopefully, we collectively will prove that with our steadfastness, this will not happen. And then turn around to go to the West Bank and finish the Palestinian identity at large by evicting Palestinians to Jordan, hoping that this will bring peace. I would say, trouble in your backyard is trouble at home. Never sit tight and believe that you can forge peace through barbed wires and through walls. You have to knock the moral wall that exists in your mind and believe in the policy of live and let live. Netanyahu often asked us to negotiate without even raising any condition. Can you imagine you negotiate your pizza while it's being eaten? This is what was happening.
There were talks of several rounds of negotiation that involved Israel and Saudi, also some concessions to Palestine, the Palestinian Authority, and there is also a theory that the whole attack was to sabotage that deal, a trilateral deal of which a Palestinian Authority was also part of. Is that something you can confirm?
Well, let me say that, discussion was underway. Things were looking at least a bit hopeful.
இஸ்ரேல், சவுதி அரேபியா,
But I would say it's all
பாலஸ்தீனம்
talk.
ஆகிய மூன்று
There's
நாடுகளுக்கு
not
இடையே
been any
நடந்து
solid
வந்த பொருளாதார
developments.
தொடர்பான
And
பேச்சுவார்த்தைகளுக்கு
I would
இதனால்
say, you
பாதிப்பு
refer to
ஏற்பட்டிருக்கிறது என்றுதான் நான் நினைக்கிறேன்.
his message and says, the two-state solution, and that he's offered Abu Mazen, a deal that he couldn't have refused. But Abu Mazen, so to correct this narrative, Abu Mazen had asked him many times to give him a copy of the document so that he's able to resonate this back with the government. But Netanyahu refused. And it was in his dying moments, Olmert refused, and that was in his dying moments in office. So I would say anything that is not solidified, anything that's not written on paper and signed, is just hopeful thinking.
What did MBS, the Saudis, advocate for you as a part of their peace deal with Israel?
We have heard their position, we have seen their stance, and we admire their determination that if the Arab-Israeli conflict not resolved, there will not be peace in the region. And remember, Saudi was the one to have come up with what developed later to become the Arab Initiative. So the Saudis know quite well that item 1 on the initiative
இப்போது
is to
சவுதி
give
அரேபியா
back the
இஸ்ரேலோடு
rights to
ஏற்படுத்த
the
இருந்த
Palestinians and to serve
ஒப்பந்தத்தை
allow justice to be served, and then go to number 2, which is
நிராகரித்திருக்கிறது.
normalization.
இந்த ஒப்பந்தத்தால் இந்த பகுதியில் அமைதி ஏற்படாது என்பதை சவுதி புரிந்து கொண்டிருக்கிறது.
What is taking place is prioritizing the end to war. I know there's been talk about aid, talk about refusal of displacement of Palestinians, but our top priority is ending hostilities now.
Can you talk to us about the current situation in Gaza? I'm sure you're in good connection with people there and you follow developments there. Can you tell our viewership about the current situation in Gaza and what do you hope to be the situation in Gaza in the near future?
Situation is extremely desperate. People have no water, electricity, there's no telecom, even their phones are running out.
காசாவில் இருக்கின்ற மக்களுக்கு மின்சாரம், குடிநீர் ஆகியவை இல்லை. தொலைத்தொடர்பு துண்டிக்கப்பட்டிருக்கிறது.
Basic services, and even the Rafah crossing, when it had opened for small number of lorries to bring in aid, it was damaged. It was bombed by Israel on day 1. So every aspect of life is dying out, and Israel is hopeful by killing means of life it can push Palestinians that will mobilize from the city of Gaza and northern Gaza to the south. They will be basically deported to Egypt. But Egypt luckily is taking our position, and I hope it will be firm in its stance not to allow exodus of Palestinians into Egypt and not allow the second Nakba to happen whereby Palestinians are displaced. It's bad enough that Israel has mobilized half of the population of Gaza into southern Gaza.
There is a section of Israelis who hope that Hamas will be defeated at the end of this conflict, and they hope Palestinian Authority to take over in Gaza too. Is that your hope too?
I would say, Hamas has been part of the Palestinian political divide, as it were. But
do you think they are a legitimate player in this?
No, they're not a member of the PLO, as you know.
Yes.
And Fatah has many times had negative encounters with Hamas. I think it is not the time now. It's time to save the lives of our people, and we have to advocate this push for the cessation of hostilities. I would say also that the PLO has invited many parties beyond Hamas
பாலஸ்தீனிய மக்கள் ஹமாஸ் மீது நம்பிக்கை வைப்பதில் அர்த்தமில்லை என்பதை புரிந்து கொள்வார்கள்.
This push from the international community will resurface the importance and revitalize the work for the establishment of peace in the future. Mind you, the eradication of a specific party by means of force sometimes or most of the times has proven to have made the party stronger.
போரின் மூலம் ஒரு குறிப்பிட்ட பிரிவினரை கட்சியை அழித்தொழிக்க நினைப்பது சில சமயத்தில்
be assured that
வேறு விதமான விளைவுகளை ஏற்படுத்தலாம்.
The savagery with which Israel is showing might is not going to be the solution for the future.
Your leadership has been having multiple encounters with the United States presidents and the Secretary of State and other leaders. What is the US telling you? What is their promise to you?
I think, the biggest promise that was broken, that the Biden administration will be serious about the peace process, will be serious about the recognition of self-determination and rights to Palestinians. And we have not been the ones, it was an American initiative by Biden to promise the leadership that it won't be a reflection of the Trump administration. But so far, he has followed on one Trump aspect, which is the so-called Abrahamic Accords and normalization with Israel. Given emphasis to that and not given emphasis to the recognition of Palestinian rights, to the establishment of a Palestinian state, of cessation of hostilities, of the refusal to recognize Israel's unilateral acts in the West Bank and confiscation of property and land and more
அமெரிக்கா பாலஸ்தீனியர்களுடைய உரிமைகளை உணர்வுகளை மதிக்கவில்லை. அவர்களுடைய அமைதியான வாழ்க்கைக்கு ஆதரவு அளிக்கவில்லை.
Extremely disappointed. I think, one of the reasons as to why we stand here, because America did not do the job it had promised to do and has not allowed the two-state solution to prevail. Day in and day out, President Abbas asked Biden, if you believe in two states, your narrative is about two states, why not go to the UN and recognize Palestine as a full-fledged member state? Discussion dies there. And we start, getting the diplomatic answers. It's no time for diplomacy now. There is time for action.
In this round of conflict, he has had multiple calls with your leadership, Abu Mazen and several others. What are they saying in this round of conflict? What are they insisting you? What are they telling you about this kind of situation?
Priority is for cessation of hostilities. We see an ongoing massacre taking shape. We have to stop hostilities.
தலைவர்களுடைய கருத்துக்கள் எல்லாம் இப்போது நடக்கின்ற தாக்குதல்கள் நிறுத்தப்பட வேண்டும், மக்களின் துன்பங்கள் உடனடியாக நீக்கப்பட வேண்டும் என்பதுதான் முக்கியம்.
The US is saying that wants to see Israel abide by international law even in their combat. They say they want to open human corridors to allow human aid to flow into Gaza. This is good.
அமெரிக்கா கூட இந்த மக்களை கொல்வது நிறுத்தப்பட வேண்டும், மக்களுக்கு செல்ல வேண்டிய உதவிகள் செல்ல வேண்டும் என்பதை பற்றி கூறுகிறது.
I would say that's an issue that needs to be settled and needs to be discussed. And I would say, under the continuation of bombardment, that is complicated, very complicated.
What would you like to tell our viewers at this end of this interview?
I would say, India is India, close to heart, close to mind, and India can play a bigger role than it's playing, and its government has to come and believe in the
இந்தியா
message of peace as the way forward,
பாலஸ்தீனியர்களுக்கு மிகவும் நெருக்கமான ஒரு நாடாக இருந்திருக்கிறது. அது இங்கே அமைதியை நிலைநாட்டுவதற்கு தேவையான நடவடிக்கை எடுக்கக்கூடிய நிலையிலே இருக்கிறது.
of Palestinians' dreams and aspirations.
Thank you very much. Let's hope that peace prevails in this region. Thank you very much. பாலஸ்தீனிய நிர்வாகத்துடைய முக்கிய தலைவர் நமக்கு அளித்த பேட்டியை கேட்டோம். இருநாட்டு தீர்வு அவர் வலியுறுத்துகிறார். ஒரு பாலஸ்தீனிய தேசம் உருவாவதுதான் சரி. இந்தியா கிட்ட எங்கள்கிட்ட இன்னும் எதிர்பார்ப்பு இருக்கு. அமெரிக்க நிலைப்பாடு ஏமாற்றம் அளிக்கிறது அப்படிங்கிறது அவருடைய பேட்டியுடைய முக்கியமான சாராம்சமாக இருக்கிறது. ஒளிப்பதிவாளர் லூக்கஸுடன் பாலஸ்தீனிய தலைநகரம் ராமல்லாவிலிருந்து ஹரிஹரன்.